The knock came at midnight, soft, uncertain, the kind that felt like it might disappear if ignored. Daniel froze in his small living room, one hand gripping the edge of the couch, the other resting over his chest as if his heart needed steadying. His son, Noah, was asleep down the hall, the rhythmic hum of the heater the only sound keeping the house alive. Daniel hadn't had visitors at midnight since his wife died 3 years ago. And yet, the knock came again, this time louder, more desperate. Something in that sound carried fear, and Daniel knew he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he didn't open the door. When he did, he found a woman standing on his porch, soaked from the cold rain, her dark hair plastered to her face, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if she might break apart if she let go. Her eyes were wide and searching, the eyes of someone who had run a long way without knowing where she was going. "I'm sorry," she whispered before he could speak. "I just need one night. I'll be gone by morning. Please." Her voice shook, and Daniel saw something else beneath the fear, shame. The kind that comes from having no one left to ask. Daniel hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to be careful. He was a single father. Every choice he made now wasn't just about him. But then Noah shifted in his sleep down the hall, and Daniel remembered all the nights he'd stood helpless in hospital corridors, praying for mercy that never came. He stepped aside. "Come in," he said quietly. "You'll freeze out here." Her name was Lena. She sat at his kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, staring into the steam as if it held answers. Daniel didn't ask questions. He'd learned that sometimes silence was the kindest language. He gave her dry clothes, an old sweatshirt of his and a pair of clean socks, and showed her the guest room. As he turned to leave, she finally spoke. "Thank you," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You have no idea what this means." Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. He didn't know it yet, but that single night would change everything he thought he knew about courage, trust, and the quiet power of doing the right thing. The next morning, Daniel woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of hushed movement. He found Lena in the kitchen, flinching as if afraid she'd done something wrong. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I was just trying to help." He smiled gently and told her it was fine. Noah wandered in moments later, rubbing his eyes, and stared at Lena with open curiosity. "Are you my dad's friend?" he asked. Lena knelt to his level, her smile soft but sad. "Just someone who needed help," she replied. Noah considered this, then nodded as if it made perfect sense. Over breakfast, fragments of her story began to emerge. Lena had left an abusive relationship, one that had grown darker over time until fear was her constant companion. She'd tried to disappear quietly, but the man she'd run from wasn't ready to let her go. Daniel listened, his jaw tight, his fists clenched beneath the table. He recognized that fear. He'd seen it in his late wife's eyes during her final weeks, when pain became unbearable and hope felt distant. The house that had been so quiet since her passing suddenly felt alive again, not with joy, but with purpose. The challenges came quickly. Strange cars began to linger down the street. Lena jumped at every sound. Daniel barely slept, keeping one ear open through the night. He struggled with doubt, wondering if he'd made a dangerous mistake, if he was putting Noah at risk. One evening, as Noah colored at the table, Daniel overheard Lena quietly packing her bag. "I can't stay," she said, her voice breaking. "I won't forgive myself if something happens to your son because of me." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "You don't get to decide that alone," he said. "Running won't keep him safe. Doing the right thing will." With the help of a local shelter and a legal aid group, Lena began the process of protection. It wasn't easy. There were moments she wanted to quit, moments when fear nearly won. Daniel stood by her, watching Noah grow protective too, offering her his favorite toy when she cried. The night her ex showed up, pounding on the door and shouting threats, Daniel's hands trembled, but he didn't open it. He called the police. He held Noah close. He stood firm. And when it was over, when the sirens faded and silence returned, Lena collapsed in tears of relief. Weeks later, the house felt different. Lighter. Lena moved into a small apartment nearby, starting over piece by piece. On her last night in Daniel's home, she stood at the doorway, eyes shining. "You saved my life," she said. Daniel shook his head. "You saved it yourself," he replied. "I just opened the door." She hugged Noah, then Daniel, and walked out into a future that finally felt like her own. Long after she left, Daniel would think about that night, the knock, the choice, the fear. He realized loneliness had made him cautious, had taught him to survive but not to reach. Opening that door hadn't just protected Lena. It had healed something broken inside him too. And as he watched Noah sleep peacefully, Daniel understood the truth he'd carry forever. Sometimes, the bravest thing a lonely heart can do is open itself, because you never know whose life, including your own, you might be saving.